whatever goals that you have. So today we decided the topic was to how to refresh. It was refreshing your relationships, and so the first thing that we've got that I said in our previous one and I wanted to start with is for us to be able to discern and to decipher the difference between a relationship that is stale and needs to be refreshed and one that needs to end. There are some relationships that strictly need to end. As you mature, as you develop, as you adjust, as you change, then some relationships just no longer are beneficial. If that is the situation, then I always suggest that you end the relationship right. There is, even in marriage, the Bible talks about leaving and cleaving. And so, what I always say is, if you want to cleave right, then that means that you have to leave right. If we don't leave right, meaning if we don't handle the end of the previous thing properly, then it's going to carry over into the next thing. And so you have to do that. Now, there are some instances where you cannot, have a discussion with someone or something like that, and you just strictly have to walk away. That's totally acceptable. But in situations where you can do it, then I always recommend to do it, okay? So that's if the relationship is ending. And please, let me preface this by saying again, I'm talking about all relationships. I'm talking about the relationships between you and your parents. I'm talking about relationships between you and other extended family. I'm talking about the relationships between you and your job. I'm talking about any type of relationship that you possibly could be in. This refresh your relationship information is going to be beneficial, because how many of you guys know if you work for a company for longer than a year, there's going to come a time where you're going to feel like, or there's going to come a season, a month or whatever, you're going to feel like, am I supposed to still be here? Maybe I need to go look for another job. These people are getting on my nerves, those types of things. All of those types of discussions and questions we ask ourselves. So it's not just for marriage. It's not just for dating relationships. It's for all relationships. And so I'm going to use the backdrop again of gardening in order to help make the points that I want to give you tonight. Okay, there are 4 things that I want to give you that will help, I believe, refresh any type of relationship that you know and that you discern needs to be a relationship that you keep. So again, as you come in, please hit the share button and we're going to go ahead. So, all right, here we go. So the first thing that you have to realize or that you need to do when you find out that your relationship is one that needs to be refreshed is you need to clear any weeds. And so weeds are, in most instances, are things that grow near a plant or a flower. They grow under, around, and what they do is they take some of the nutrients from the soil, from the environment, from the plant or the flower, and block the exposure to those elements that are necessary for it to grow. They also cause you to, they also cover up and hide plants and flowers so that we can't really get the full beauty or the full picture of what is growing or what the plant or the flower or plant is. So what you need to do is you need to, in your relationship, find out what the weeds are in your relationship and pull them. So what are weeds? Weeds can be something, can be a lot of things. A weed in a relationship could be a career or a particular job. So there are some of us, and this typically historically has been something that has been a male issue, but can find a job that we work so much and we put so much effort and time into that it literally begins to choke the life out of our marriages or out of our relationships, because they put so much stress and strain on us, and we spend so much time doing them that we no longer have the energy or have the oxygen that we need, that are necessary to feed our relationships. So sometimes, and I'm not telling anybody to quit a job, but sometimes we either need to reprioritize the job, we need to learn how to spend less time, become more efficient, or something so that we have the energy and we have the oxygen or that we have whatever we need to have in order to be able to maintain the relationship that we are currently in. So it's not just jobs. Sometimes it could even be a friend, another friendship. We have those people who are in our ears who, even who might mean well, but might be giving us bad information, and that they are literally choking the life out of our relationships. Other weeds can be church. If you are someone who's in a relationship and that is, or you're in a marriage and that takes priority or precedence over your marriage, then that is not healthy, and that's something again that needs to be adjusted. Other weeds can be, like I said, family members. Family members can be a weed that causes issues, or that causes problems, or chokes again the life out of our relationship. So we need to be careful. We need to be specific. We need to be everything that we need to do. Anything that we need to do to remove remove the weeds from our life. Here is the problem, and here's the danger. So I remember I probably had to be about in seventh, I was in high school. I had to be in high school, and my father we had just moved to Olympia Fields, and we had cleared out this whole section. And my father decided he wanted to grow some, I forgot what kind of plant it was, but we planted the seeds in the ground, and as they grew, the problem was, he told me one day, he said, "Son, I want you to go out there and I want you to pick the weeds, because they are they're choking the other things that are in there." So I went out there and I just started picking what I assumed were weeds. And the problem was that because of the type of flower that he planted, the weeds looked just like the flower. And so in essence, I had accidentally pulled up some of the flowers, as well as in the process of pulling up some of the weeds. So in this process, we have to be careful that we don't pull up the flower, but that we know the difference between, again, what's the actual flower, what's the actual plant, and what is the actual weed. But we have to be, which is why I say we have to be specific about what we're going to change, what we're going to adjust in our relationships in order for them to be effective. Here's the truth of the matter is that, again, weeds hinder growth in relationships. And sometimes, if we're not careful, the monotony or the day-to-day things that we go through or that we have to deal with can cause those weeds to grow, and we won't even pay attention to them because we're just living life. So we got to be very careful about that. All right, so what's the second thing that we need to do? Once we pull the weeds, then what we need to do is we need to then clear the roots. So in the process of doing this, or in the process of trying to refresh our relationships, what you find is that the root of the plant, of course, is where the nourishment comes from. It's where, when we water, it's where, the food comes from, and it comes up through the bottom of the plant, in most instances. Well, if there are weeds that are growing, sometimes those weeds or other things will surround themselves and literally begin to choke the root, so it can't grow. And so what you have to do is what some gardeners do is they literally pick up the flower by the root, clean it off, and then re-put it back into the ground. So that way it gives it a better chance to grow, because there is no more blockage. So what do I mean by clear the roots? What I mean is that we have to spend some time finding out who our partner really is at this season of their life. If you've listened to me talk about relationships before, you've heard me say that in dating relationships, usually around around the 6th or 7th month, and then around the 2nd year, if you're still dating at that time, things usually start to change and start to shift because people change. If you're in a a marriage relationship, usually around between years 7 and 10, that change starts to happen. And the reason that happens, again, is because simply people change, people grow, people mature, people's likes and dislikes change. And in the process of that, we sometimes lose touch of who the person really is at the root. And so sometimes we have to take a step back and find out and relearn. In relationships, we call it relearning that person again. And so that could be something as doing that could be something as simple as there is a questionnaire. I'll post it for you, but it's 300 questions that you can ask for relationships, and they're literally just questions that you can go through to rediscover who each other is all over again. To find out, listen, what do you like? When I first met you, this was important to you, or this was your love language. What is important to you now, and what is your love language now? Do you still like acts of service, or is it more important to you now that you have quality time? So those are all things that we have to relearn, and if we don't, the relationship again can be choked out, because those things that are roots, those things that are the core of who we are, can be ignored. And if they're ignored long enough, then that person feels like you don't care. So if you've ever been in a relationship and you heard somebody says, you just don't know who I am anymore, you just don't care about me anymore, you don't even take the time to know what I like, or you don't take the time to, those are all signs or signs that person feels like the core of who they are is no longer important, or that is no longer something that you are connecting to, and so you have to take a step back and say, okay, let me relearn who this person is and what we can do in order to reconnect at the root. Okay, so here's the third thing that we can do. So now we've talked about the first thing we said that you have to do is you have to, again, clear the weeds. The second thing after you clear the weeds, hey Nicole, the second thing you do after you clear the weeds, we talked about is clearing the roots, or removing anything from the roots. So the third thing that you do is that you need to then check your soil. So soil is the environment in which the relationship and the, hey Latasha, how you doing? It's the soil. What that is it is the environment or the things that feed your relationship. So soil's main purpose is protection, and this other purpose is for nutrition. And so sometimes our relationships are planted in just bad soil. They're planted in places, hey Latavia, how you doing? They're planted in places that are no longer conducive for our growth. So we've got friends, for example, who no longer are beneficial to us. We're not surrounding ourselves with mentors or with elders who can pour into us. Maybe it could even be something like, that we're in a church that no longer has the type of things that we need, and because they don't have the things that we need, we're no longer growing to become our marriage is no longer growing, and so there are people who can no longer help us. Maybe we need to move because our environment where we live is not even beneficial for where we are in this phase of our relationships. And again, and if we're talking about business, it's the same thing. Maybe I've surrounded myself, you guys have heard me talk about my well. Maybe the people who are in my well, or who my employees, or who my counterparts, or this company no longer gives me, it no longer has the environment that I need in order to grow as a person, as an employee, as a supervisor, as a manager. So again, you have to really think about this holistically, this environment holistically, to decide what you need to do. And in some instances, when we're gardening, the issue is maybe the plant or maybe the soil is the wrong soil for the plant, or maybe it just doesn't have the right nutrients. So you can either change the soil, or there are supplements that you can actually give soil that will help it grow and become richer so your plants can grow stronger. So you have to determine, again, it goes back to discerning what's necessary, but that's something that definitely needs to be checked. So that's the third thing. And here's the fourth and final thing. The fourth thing that you need to do if your relationship needs to be refreshed is there needs to be a period of time after you have changed, after you have removed the weeds, after you have cleared your roots, after you have checked your soil, then there needs to be a period of time where you simply just water one another. And watering one another is nothing more than spending time together, where you can literally incubate your relationship, where you are simply just pouring into each other the things that will help build you up. Not build you up, so you're not going to pour into the other person the things that will build you up. You're going to pour into your partner the things that will build them up. Which, by the way, is another huge mistake that many of us make, is that we pour into other, or we do for our partner what we want them to do for us, except that that person might not always need what we're giving. So again, I'll use the 5 love languages. Again, I might like words of affirmation, which is my primary love language, but me affirming my partner does nothing for my partner if her primary love language is quality time. So I'm steady giving her words of affirmation, and they're going one ear in one ear and out the other, because she really needs quality time. So when you water somebody, you need to pour the water that they need, that will help them grow stronger and help them feel more comfortable and more secure. It will help their roots grow deeper. It'll help the soil, all the nutrition and all of the nutrients in the soil. It helps it get to your partner. So those, again, are 4 things that you can do. Again, we talked about, you need to make sure that you check the roots, get rid of the weeds. Then after you get rid of the weeds, you've got to check the roots. Then after you check and clean the roots, you got to check your soil. And then after you check and clean your soil, then you need to water one another. Relationships are actually, I was thinking today, somebody said that relationships are hard. And I think to some extent they are hard. But I think what makes relationships hard or difficult is that you cannot get lazy in a relationship. So, there are periods of time where we might be able to get away with coasting, but for the most part, you always have to be in the mode of self-discovering things about yourself, but then also discovering new things about your partner. And as you do that, then that's where the work, so to speak, comes in. But relationships should not be, relationships should not be constant stress, constant tension, constant fighting. Those are not healthy. That is not healthy. And if that is the place that you're in, again, those are indications that your relationship needs to be refreshed. Those are indications that you need to, again, take a step back, do the 4 things that I just said, and then proceed. And once again, like I said at the beginning, you could very well be in a relationship, business, friendship, dating, marriage. You could very well be in one of those that needs to end. However, if that is the case, then you need to end it right. But again, make sure that is correct, because most times, any type of relationship where there initially was love, the only thing that has happened typically, and most times, is that we stopped loving the other person the way they needed to be loved. And because of that, we have again caused an environment where that person no longer can grow. And that's just the truth. So again, I hope this is beneficial to you. I hope this helped you. Again, I really, really believe in mutually strong, and relationships are being strong. I believe that as man and women, we are created to complete each other and not compete with each other. That the best thing that God ever did was to create somebody who would come alongside us, and and help us as we grow, and as we create, and as we become who we are supposed to be. And that's why it's imperative, again, that you choose the right partner, that you have the right foundation, that you protect and keep the right environment, and again, that you spend a whole lot of time trying to water each other, because it is vitally important. Listen, the person who you marry is probably the second most important decision you will make. The person who you marry is the second most important decision you'll make. To me, the most important decision that you will make is, of course, is giving your life to Jesus Christ. The most decision is who you marry. After that, everything else we can work around. We can work around job, we can fix money, we can fix a lot of stuff, but those 2 things can be disastrous from my perspective, if you make the wrong decisions in those 2 areas. So Again, I hope this is beneficial. I hope it was helpful. What I'm going to do on the call, I gave some resources, and I know I'm not going to remember all of the resources I gave you. So I'll post them, post the full list of resources that I have for you that you can, that I would encourage everybody to read or watch. So I've got some books that I really think that you should watch. Ladies, there is a book. I can't remember the author, but it is called Wild at Heart. I believe his name is John Eldridge. I believe that's what his name is. But if you have never read this book, read the book. It will help you understand men very well. Okay? Fellas, there is a book called How to Love a Black Woman. It is not just for black women, it is for all women, but he titled it How to Love a Black Woman by Dr. Ron Elmore. It is an awesome book. Read the book. Also, men and women, there's a set of books, a set of books called Kingdom Man and Kingdom Woman, written by Dr. Tony Evans. And the second one is his daughter, and he co-wrote it. I can't remember her name. Get the books. Very good books. Then there is, my favorite, of course, is Love and Respect by Dr. Emerson Eggerichs, I believe his name is. Awesome book. Check it out. Great resource. Of course, Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages. If you like me and you like to do a lot of videos, you can listen to again. There is Dr. John Gottman. That's Gottman, I believe. He is an expert, one of the leading experts in the country, in the world, on relationships. You should check him out in his videos. There's also Jimmy Evans and Karen Evans. They do some great things on marriage as well. So there's, again, I'll post the full list. I almost told you all of it. I know I left a couple of them out. I'll post them in the comments so you guys can check them all out. But please, 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 put some time in. I know Dr. Miles Monroe is one of the people that I put in there too. So, but again, I hope this is beneficial. If you didn't get a chance to share it, please share this video. Please share this video. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. I love you. And again, thank you all for spending the time with us tonight. I hope you guys have long-lasting, fulfilling relationships in every area of your life, because I believe that, again, that is what God wants for us, and I believe that only makes us better. Have a good night. She got pretty brown eyes and pretty soft skin. I love everything about her.